the biggest candidate in this year's coaching cycle took arguably maybe not the most high profile, but one of the biggest jobs in the NFL. Ben Johnson hired to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears on Monday afternoon, ends a long flirtation between the two. So that's where we're going to start the show here. Ben Johnson being named the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And to talk about it, who better than our friend Carmen Vitali of FoxSports.com, Chicago native Carmen Vitali of FoxSports.com.
Currently in Chicago.
Who is in Chicago right now, which, okay, let's start there. There were so many uncertainties, so many variables. The Bears talked to everybody in this coaching search, and it started to feel like a long shot that they would get this big fish, this slam dunk hire of the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator. What's the vibe in Chicago now that they A, have a head coach, and B, got like the name in this cycle?
Yeah, I don't think Bears fans have learned anything over the last couple of off seasons where things look so bright and shiny and new, and then the expectations just skyrocket because of it. Listen, I'm not here to say that the Bears don't have the capability to go to the postseason next year or get to, the conference championship or what have you. But I'm just saying that this was a step in the right direction. We still need to kind of hold off a little bit. But as far as the vibe in Chicago, I mean, nobody's listening to me from that regard. I all over the place, people are celebrating. I'm surprised I don't hear fireworks right now.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into that, because again, this was, I think, from the first time Matt Eberflus screwed up this year, like way back before Thanksgiving, this was the name. Like, this is the guy who's overseen Detroit becoming this juggernaut of an offense. The trick plays, obviously. He ran the stumble bum fake fumble against the Bears at Soldier Field earlier on this season. Everybody knows all of that, but Ben Johnson officially agreeing to take the job with this Bears team, with Caleb Williams, with plenty of receiver talent, with work to do on the offensive line. Like, where do you think this starts with Ben Johnson trying to put his imprint on the Chicago Bears?
I have often referred to Ben Johnson as the purveyor of thick excellence because of how much he believes in the offensive line himself or itself. He knows that everything really starts with a solid unit, and that's why you've seen Detroit invest so heavily in their offensive line. I mean, it really does start and end with those guys up front. And with Ben Johnson, the end of their responsibilities really doesn't exist, because you've seen guys like Penei Sewell, who is an athletic freak. He shifts sides. He pull, not even just in a pulling sense. He'll line up on the left side sometimes during these trick plays. He's gone out for passes. He's gone out to throw a pass. He's gone in the backfield as a fullback. The possibilities with the offensive line under Ben Johnson are literally limitless. And we've seen that time and time again. So it makes me really excited as someone who really loves to watch what these guys are capable of and have someone in charge who really appreciates what they bring to an offense. Outside of that, though, it starts there, but you have a really good budding young talent in Caleb Williams. That is going to be where Ben Johnson is going to have to shine. You want him to develop Caleb and really get the best out of him, like you were able to do with Jared Goff. I know Jared Goff had a lot more experience by the time Ben Johnson got to him, but what he's done for Jared Goff's career cannot be overstated. He was firmly in the MVP conversation at parts of this season and has played the best football of his career and only gotten better in the 3 seasons he's had under Ben Johnson. And that's translated to overall offensive success. You see it on the screen right now. They haven't finished lower than ranked third as far as total offense ranks go. They haven't finished lower than 5th since Ben Johnson took over in points scored per game. This is an incredibly potent offensive attack led by a guy that keeps developing his own and honing his own skills. He's so adaptable. He takes into account his personnel, all of that kind of stuff. And I cannot wait to see what he gets his hands on in Chicago. I have to think it starts with that offensive line.
I have to think you're right. And the Bears do have a top 10 pick. You know, they just drafted Darnell Wright at right tackle not all that long ago, but you can definitely add another piece on that offensive line. It feels like this is going to be a good draft class for offensive tackles. So maybe this is a year where the Bears go get a franchise left tackle. You could argue maybe they should have done that last year and they opted not
Yeah.
to, but hey, no time like the present. I am okay. One more thought about Ben Johnson and the personnel, and then I have some more front officey types of topics I want to hit on. But you talk about Ben Johnson working with Caleb Williams. There were a lot of people that wondered how much Ben Johnson would want to coach Caleb Williams because Caleb is this freelancer and this improviser, and he needs to learn how to get rid of the ball faster. And I heard plenty of people discuss the idea that maybe Ben Johnson wants a Jared Goff in the sense that he is just a point guard who is going to get the ball to his playmakers. That's not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is the playmaker. I'm curious what you think about Ben Johnson adapting to that type of quarterback because Jared Goff's been wonderful in this offense, but these are two completely different approaches to playing quarterback.
Well, yeah, but I think it's unfair to project onto what Ben Johnson's ideal quarterback is. He didn't have any sort of personnel decision making ability when it came to having Jared Goff. Jared Goff was the guy that he had to work with. And at the end of the day, he got the best out of him. But I think when you look at guys that Detroit acquired while Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator, though they're not quarterbacks, you look at a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. Brad Holmes, their general manager, took a lot of flack for drafting a running back and not the consensus first overall running back in that class at number 12. And look at what Ben Johnson has been able to do with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. He really exploits all of Jahmyr Gibbs' skill set. He uses him in the passing game. He uses him obviously on the ground. He is a big play waiting to happen. And it's been Ben Johnson that has unlocked those kinds of things. And he loves having guys that have all of this innate playmaking ability and being able to kind of figure out an offense that, again, is going to exploit those things. So though it's not with a quarterback, I have to imagine that having a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who can factor into the run game as far as how much he scrambles, is a playmaker in the backfield. He has the opportunity to improvise, but also has the opportunity to, I mean, like the ability rather to, he's got all those like sidearm angles. He doesn't have to be set on his feet to throw the ball all the way down the field. His off-platform throws, some of them have been incredible. The vision he has on the field. I have to imagine that for a guy like Ben Johnson, who's an absolute sicko, that having a guy with all of that in his toolbox is going to be so fun as far as concocting a scheme that can really exploit all of those wonderful traits that Caleb Williams has and really figure out how to stress defenses in ways that only a guy like Caleb Williams would be able to do.
Caleb got pranked by somebody saying that they were Ben Johnson a week or two ago, and I bet he like looked real hard at the text that he got on Monday before ultimately figuring out that it was true. Happy for him that he didn't get pranked this time around. All right, one last thing I wanted to touch on, which is the Bears of it all. Like, okay, football is going to be why this is successful or not successful, but there's so much other stuff that goes into it. And you and I have talked about this. It's a very interesting situation in Chicago where Ryan Poles rebuilt this roster over the last few years, but there was uncertainty about whether he would survive this. You and I talked about how much authority Kevin Warren, the team president, had in this whole thing. He's trying to get a stadium built in the Chicagoland area. On top of that, the Bears are not typically a team that spends a lot of money on their coaching staff. I don't know the number that Ben Johnson just earned, but I guarantee you it's large. So
yes.
What changed that led to the Bears pulling this off, A? And is this like a vote of optimism, a vote of confidence that maybe the Chicago Bears can get out of their own way a little bit?
You certainly hope so, because this does go against a lot of what we know the Chicago Bears have done historically, which is, you're right, not gone out and gotten the flashy, number one candidate in the pool type of guy. And they certainly haven't spent the amount of money that I'm assuming Ben Johnson is commanding, because he had so much interest, not just from the Bears, but from multiple other teams that were going to be willing to pay him money. The biggest thing now is that the spending is not done, because you want Ben Johnson to be bringing in experience, especially on the defensive side of the ball, so he doesn't have to worry about that. That's going to come at a premium if you're getting a guy that has coordinator experience, ideally had prior head coaching experience even. That's not going to come cheap. And if you want the best of the best, you're going to have to continue to spend to get the best of the best, and not only on the staff and their salaries, but the resources that, Ben Johnson is going to come in and say, hey, listen, I need this from my sports science department. I need this from an analytics standpoint. I need this when it comes to the meal prep that these guys are getting and all of that. That all costs money. And that's not something that the Bears have been known to do. So that needs to continue, not just with, you can't rest on getting the guy at this point. You need to surround him with the resources and the talent on staff that is going to help him be successful and set him up for success, because all of this buzz is great, and that's inevitably going to help you get that stadium built by drawing all this interest and wanting people wanting to come to Bears games, and then being in the cycle and again benefiting from that kind of revenue that comes with all of that attention. But this is far from over as far as the process goes to setting Ben Johnson now up for success in Chicago.
I think that's right. And I think you're right to remind people to be a little bit cautious and a little bit patient. This is it'll be year one for Ben Johnson. B,
yes,
as good as this looks on paper, nothing is a sure thing. I will just say right now, it just feels like the Bears have gotten it right. And man, you get the most coveted hire in this cycle, joining a division with 3 legitimate Coach of the Year candidates. That sounds fun as hell. Again, I'm not gonna go overboard right now, but you gotta
Chicago Bears Twitter has done that for you.
They'll do it for me. Yeah, Bears Twitter can go overboard. For right now, I'm just gonna say the vibes. I'll even go as far as to say the vibes feel better in Chicago than I expected them to feel, because I didn't expect them to hit this Grand Slam hire.
Yeah, this was the most defensible hire you could have made, so that even if this doesn't ultimately work out, you can say we did what we were supposed to do with the information we had at that time. Like, you absolutely cannot fault the Bears going forward for making this decision, even if it doesn't end up working out down the road. And that's the other thing I want to point out before we're off of this topic is we still don't know how Ben Johnson will be as a head coach. There is always a learning curve, no matter how good of a coordinator you are, no matter how much you saw your head coach pull off this, organizational overhaul like Ben Johnson saw Dan Campbell do in Detroit. No matter how much you've seen that and how much kind of indirect experience you have, this is still his first time in the head chair. It's his first time having to answer for the organization as a whole. It's his first time having to be accountable for every little decision on top of the offense. Again, you look even at him taking over the offensive coordinator post, being elevated from that tight ends coach position in 2022. The Lions started that season 1-6. It didn't take hold right away, as so often these things don't. You need to give Ben Johnson a leash, a long leash if you're the Chicago Bears. You need to give him patience if you're Bears fans. I don't want to hear about people saying Super Bowl right off the bat and be really disgruntled when it doesn't happen. This is something that is going to still take time. For as good of a coordinator as he is, as great of a hire as this was, you still need to allow for there to be some bumps in the road.
I really appreciate you trying.
I'm off my soapbox now.
I really appreciate you trying, and you're not wrong. I have this feeling that it's going to fall on deaf ears as the 2025 season,
as it often does,
starts to draw closer, but certainly a very fun storyline to watch.